Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Monday afternoon. I think some really intriguing news for the South Carolina fans as former Troy offensive lineman Boaz Stanley committing to South Carolina. Now, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say we've talked a lot about South Carolina as it pertains to the transfer portal. We've talked about visitors. We've talked about targets. Boaz Stanley was not on my radar. And I check my phone. I see Boaz Stanley committing to South Carolina. I immediately start doing some research on this kid. I throw on a football game, and I'll say this: this makes a lot of sense for South Carolina. Now, I'm not sure if he's a plug-and-play starter, but we talked about it yesterday. The center position is a little bit of a question mark. Boaz Stanley could be your answer. Now, I think what's so fascinating about Boaz Stanley is he started the season in 2024 at Troy playing right tackle. It wasn't great. I mean, you take a look at him and you say he doesn't look like a tackle body. I mean, he kicks into center for the last 6 games of the season. He grades out phenomenally well. And so, although he might not be a good right tackle, which I don't think is surprising given he's only 6'4", 310, he grades out pretty dang well as a center. And that's kind of the missing piece to the South Carolina offensive line. I mean, you look at the offensive tackle position, Josiah Thompson, a left tackle, Kaysen Henry, a right tackle, 2 players that, took their lumps early in 2024, but both of which played much better football to end the 2024 season. You look on the inside, it's, in my opinion, an embarrassment of riches. I mean, whether it's a guy like Tree kicking down the guard, Trevon Baugh, you bring in Newsome, you bring in Nick Sharp, they got interior offensive linemen for days at South Carolina, both veteran pieces and kind of some young guns. I think the one question was the center position. And, snapping the football, it's important to have a center that knows what he's doing. Boaz Stanley could be that answer. Now, I want to get into a little bit of Boaz Stanley, but I also want to talk about a few other targets that have emerged for South Carolina in the transfer portal, more specifically at the running back spot. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the South Carolina fans, many of y'all know I've had a blast talking this program. The amount of support that y'all continue to show to the fellas, it means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. It sounds like Shane Beamer's not done yet, and so we're going to have some commitments to continue to break down. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's start with Boaz Stanley. And again, at the center position, this to me was the last missing piece. I actually am extremely optimistic about what this South Carolina offensive line can be in 2025. I think Shane Beamer has stockpiled a lot of young talent. He's also supplemented that with some proven commodities in the transfer portal. It's a really talented offensive line, but it's a really deep offensive line too. That last question was who's going to slot in at the center position, losing a veteran like Lee that South Carolina is. The answer could be Boaz Stanley, and I love the name. I'm going to keep saying it. You look at Boaz Stanley, he played 786 snaps in the 2024 year for Troy. He started the season at right tackle. He gave up 2 sacks. He gave up 18 pressures. Then he kicks down to center, and he gives up 0 sacks and 4 pressures. What does that tell me? And I got to watch a little bit more of this kid. I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say I haven't watched a lot of Troy football on my Saturday, so I got to watch this kid a little bit more. But what does that tell me from a surface level analysis is that he's a center. He ain't no right tackle. Well, that's exactly what South Carolina was looking for, kind of a reliable center that can come in and, whether he starts day one for South Carolina or not, this is at least a potential answer on the offensive line at the center position. We'll see how it works out for Boaz Stanley, but this one makes a lot of sense. And now I look at the South Carolina offensive line and say it kind of finally feels complete. I feel really confident that the way Josiah Thompson and Kaysen Henry played at the end of the year, they're going to be really damn good tackles. I look at the inside of the offensive line, whether it's Tree kicking down the guard, which we talked about yesterday, I truly believe needs to happen. You ask me what South Carolina's best starting 5 next year, it's hard to argue that Tree is not part of that 5. Now, do I think he beats out Josiah Thompson at the left tackle spot? No, because Josiah Thompson at the end of 2024 was playing damn good football. I think he's going to be an all-conference caliber guy over the next couple of years. But you got to figure out a way to get Tree involved, especially with you look at Tree and what he excels at playing in a phone booth. Like when Tree gets hands on an opposing defensive lineman, he does what he wants. Now, him operating in space, there were some problems with that his freshman year. You stick him in at guard and you say, hey, go box some people in a phone booth, play in a little bit less space, go put hands on people. I think that's his ideal position, quite frankly. I'm really confident with this South Carolina offensive line, obviously with a good quarterback in Lenore Sellers. Now, to me, one of the last question marks for South Carolina that I want to see answered is at the running back spot. And we got a potential answer coming in Rashu Fonson from Utah State. Probably the best running back currently available in the portal. We know South Carolina wants to add a running back, and they don't want to just add any sort of running back. They want to add an elite running back. There's been a lot of running backs South Carolina could have gone after. They decided to go after Justice Haynes, who was the number one running back in the portal. What does that tell us? Hey, we like some of our running backs, but if we're going to add a running back, we want to add a guy. Rashu Fonson would quantify as that guy at running back. I mean, over the last 2 years at Utah State, ran for over 1,800 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. In 2024, 197 carries. He forced 69 missed tackles. He had 3.8 yards per carry after contact. He's kind of the perfect blend to me. Like when you turn on Rashu Fonson, 5'11", 200 pounds, a little bit of a smaller running back, but with elite burst. Like when he gets to the second level and he's matched up with a safety in space, he's making that guy miss, and he's taking a 20-yard play and he's taking it 60 yards to the house. So I think, one, the long speed and the burst, that's what you love the most. But he's also a guy that, again, 700 yards after contact in the 2024 season, he can give you that physical aspect as well. And it's hard to find running backs that check, hey, I'm a physical running back that can deal with contact, but I also can hit the home run. I think Rashu Fonson fits that. And I would guess South Carolina kind of pushes their chips into the middle of the table for Rashu Fonson, because we know South Carolina, this is an offensive line with Lenore Sellers at quarterback that's going to be extremely effective running the football. You want an elite caliber running back running the rock. I think there's some good running backs on the South Carolina roster. I think Rashu Fonson would be the running back one. This one would make a lot of sense. He's going to be on South Carolina's campus, I believe, on Tuesday. This is one that I get the feeling Shane Beamer is going to try to lock in, because this would answer a big time question mark for South Carolina heading into 2025. One other name that I just want to add, Justin Okoronkwo. I think I said that name right. He's an Alabama linebacker that was a true freshman here in 2024. I remember covering this kid out of high school. He's a freaky athlete. He's from Germany, is new to the sport of football. He's 6'3", he's 230 pounds. You take one look at him and say, that's an SEC linebacker. And then, he runs a 4.5 in the 40, has a 10.2 broad jump. The physical traits that this kid brings to the table, it is check, 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 check right down the list. And also played a decent amount of football for Alabama. I think appeared in 7 games for Alabama. This was not a guy that they just put on the shelf and redshirted. This would make a lot of sense for South Carolina. Now, I don't know if he's a plug-and-play starter because he's only going to be a second-year guy. He is still relatively new to the sport of football, but the way I look at it, you're a little thin in the linebacker room. If you get the chance to add a body like Justin, go out and do it, because if he hits, you're looking at an all-SEC linebacker. There's no doubt in my mind about it. So we'll see if I think that's really the last position, at least on defense, the defensive line and the off-ball linebacker, probably 2 positions that South Carolina wants to add. This kid would make a lot of sense. Boaz Stanley, I think, answering a question on the offensive line, that kind of solidifies the offense for me outside of the running back spot. Rashu Fonson, I think, would kind of cap off what I think can be a really damn good offense for South Carolina in the 2025 year. We'll see how it works out. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.